of how that went. So, okay.
Is it possible to have that added to the document before council votes on it?
Do you want it added to the document? Would the commission like us to list kind of what cities we looked at?
Or the source document? Was it from the like a handbook?
Yeah, the source document came from our consulting team on this project.
And maybe just a footnote then citing the source so that it's
fine,
more clear. All right. Are there any more questions of staff before we move on to opening the public hearing for any testimony? All right. So, Erica, did we receive any public testimony for this item?
We did not.
Okay. And since the applicant and staff has nothing to rebut, do you have any final comments as applicant and staff for this application?
I do not.
And I think for the people that are listening, some of us, we have seen this document already in 2018, 2019. We had almost this exact same document in front of us. So it is not that the Planning Commission is breezing past large sections of this. It's that it's a very fresh document for many of us, and I think the council, many of the council members will have seen it already. So a lot of work has gone into this, and we had already multiple work sessions in the first iteration where we grilled the consultant and staff and had many back and forths when the EOA came through the first time. So I just don't want people to think that, you know, it's an easy thing. The staff writes something up and we just approve it. We we had a lot of hearings, a lot of work sessions, and a lot of citizen input and council input the last time we went through with this. And so with that, I would ask if anybody else has any more questions for staff before I close the hearing. All right, then we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing part of this and go to deliberation, or I can entertain a motion.
Gene, I just want to make sure there, in what happened in this meeting, looks like we just had discussion. There was no modifications that we have to what staff has presented, correct?
I had a couple of little additions to adding the Appendix B footnotes in the staff report, and then ensuring that the impact of the COVID-19 analysis, that we add a blurb in the introduction, and then in the page 16 summary chart, and page 21 the narrative before the national or part of the national trends. Just a couple of tweaks to the actual.
Okay, so for the motion, do you think it's sufficient to state with modifications as presented in the hearing?
Yeah, and if anybody else had any other modifications or changes that I missed?
No modifications. I think my only comment is it seems a little bit dated, you know, which I think we know. Might be due for some more rounds of updates, but, you know, and I think it was mentioned earlier, we have the comprehensive plan, which is comprehensive in nature by definition. And I think that kind of is really more of a forward-looking, you know, reality. I think this is supportive. It'll probably help, but it doesn't reflect a lot of what we're going to do. So I guess that's be kind of my asterisk on this thing, you know.
And that's kind of how that and the housing needs analysis goes. Is
Yeah.
It's a prescriptive document with a set of rules that we have to abide by when we try and update it. So.
Sure. Yep.
All right. I would, yes, Justin, I would, or Vice Chair Kai, I would say that it's with the suggested modifications during the hearing would be appropriate.
Okay.
In the motion.
Okay. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for Sherwood Economic Opportunities of Analysis, project number LU 2021-019 PA, based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis findings and conditions in the staff report with the following modifications as presented in this hearing.
I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council on LU 2021-019 PA Economic Opportunities Analysis with modifications. Any further discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Chair Simpson, yes. Vice Chair Kai?
Yes.
Commissioner Widola?
Yes.
Commissioner Giles?
Yes.
Commissioner Bance?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. One down. On to the next one. Hearing number 2. The public hearing on LU 2021-016 PA Residential Design Standards is called to order. To maintain compliance with public meeting laws and pursuant to House Bill 4212, this meeting is being conducted electronically. The public notices for this meeting stated that citizen comments and testimony for this public hearing item had to be submitted in writing at least 24 hours in advance in order to be included in the record. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report. Questions, if any, by the body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. Applicant, 30 minutes split between presentation and rebuttal. As previously noted, public testimony for this hearing was required to be submitted in advance in writing. Staff will read the first 4 minutes of comments received. The full text of the comments has been provided to the hearings body and the applicant in advance of this hearing and will be included in the record. The rebuttal from the applicant is the remainder of their 30 minutes. Final questions, final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the commission. We will then close the public hearing. No other comments will be heard from the public or the applicant. Discussion by the commission. The Planning Commission's role in this hearing is to make a recommendation for final action by the City Council. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the Commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again with enough detail to allow the commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. As this is a legislative matter, ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest do not impact our ability to participate this evening. Correct? All right. With that, we will move on to staff, which is also the applicant this evening.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Let me share my screen with you, hopefully. Oh boy. Excellent. Okay. Well, good evening, Chair Simpson and Commissioners. Joy Chang, Senior Planner with the Planning Department. So tonight, the City of Sherwood is proposing to adopt clear and objective criteria for residential design standards by amending the Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code. The proposed standards would typically apply to all residentially zoned parcels submitting a new residential building permit. Through the commission and council work session on the residential design standard, it was also identified that additional code amendments were necessary to fully implement the proposed text amendments. So we'll be discussing these two items further in the following slides. For many years, the City of Sherwood Planning Commission had discussed the need for residential design standards, and House Bill 2001 created the avenue in providing the residential design standard. It necessitated to develop residential design standards that were clear and objective. The House bill itself required that all residential housing be treated equally. We needed to establish residential housing standards prior to the implementation of middle housing choices required by the House Bill 2001, which we have to have in effect July 1st, 2022. Residential design standards ensure that housing design maintains the context, scale, and compatibility with the Sherwood community. The standards focus on the following: entry location, orientation, garage and off-street parking areas, and window coverage, and also minimum landscaping required in all residential zone, and other specific detail. Again, the House bill required that middle housing be reviewed through the same process and against the same standards as single detached dwelling. Therefore, staff is proposing the following clear and objective design standards. So I'm just going to walk you through them. There's a total of 8 elements, so bear with me. The first element, definitely, as I stated before, is entry location and orientation. And it lists all of these elements that have to be met in order for a building permit be issued. So that's one element. The second element has to do with garages and off-street parking areas. And as reflected on here, I'm not going to identify every single one, but the garages should not be the dominant feature of the front residential elevation. The garage doors should be articulate to reduce their visual impact. That's the goal for element number 2. Element number 3 is windows and entrances. So building elevation adjacent to streets, shared courts or common greens should include ample levels of glazing to ensure articulation of the facade, daylighting of the interior spaces, and visibility into the public realm. And it has, through our various planning commission work session, we've identified a minimum of 15% area for the primary building elevation that's adjacent to a public right-of-way. And for side building elevations that are adjacent to public right-of-way or public access way, we're requiring 10% of area is required. And that calculation includes window trims and shutters. So those were the first 3 elements. Then we go into additional design elements that we are proposing. And this slide shows 3 different subcategories, and for each subcategory, we require 1 element from each subcategory. So 1 element from the porches, 1 element from roof, and another for windows, as far as choices. And then the last, so we're already up to 6. And I indicated that there were 8 elements. So this very last slide in regards to the elements, that require a total of 8, we basically said 2 additional required elements from category A through E, which of course was the previous. So A, B, C, and then D and E, any of those 5, we can add 2 required elements from those choices, from those subcategories. So hopefully that's clear. And I know the commission has worked with us through this. So there ultimately ends up being 8 elements that would be required for each building permit, residential building permit. There are additional design elements that are identified within the code amendments. We identify building materials that are prohibited. We also talk about limitation on parking, where off-street parking is not allowed within the front yard of a dwelling except within the designated driveway or garage. And then any new residential subdivision or townhome development will also have to provide us a housing plan variety so that the houses that are proposed are not all identical, that there is a variety to the product they're providing. The additional proposed elements were identified through the Planning Commission and Council work session on the residential design. And they were identified to fully implement the proposed text amendments. Front yard landscaping standards are included. Adjustments and variances to interior side yard setbacks for all housing types are not allowed per council decision. I know that there was previous conversation or discussion in regards to reducing adjustment percentages and variance percentages, but council decided that not to go that route, instead to prohibit or not to allow interior side yard setbacks instead. And also to amend the plan unit development for clarity and to address those interior side yard setback consistent with what I just discussed. There was also minimum design standards for garages identified or proposed to assist with functionality of the space. And the final item was review by council, which allows the council to review a decision by a hearings authority, so it could be brought back up to them. The applicable criteria for plan amendment is reflected on this slide, and I'm just going to highlight a couple of them just because they are important in regards to this process. And all of the criteria have been satisfied as reflected in the written staff report, but let me just highlight a couple. It identifies community need, as I previously stated, that the commission had discussed the need for residential designs standards for many years. And they also identified the adoption of residential design standards as part of the Sherwood 2040 project. City Council held 2 work sessions on the standards and agreed to move the standards forward. The community desire for the standards were also reinforced through the visual preference survey and virtual open house. It also assists in implementing the House Bill 2001 middle housing legislation. And the Sherwood Council and Planning Commission have identified the need for the proposed amendments. Another key aspect in regards to the criteria is goal 1, citizen involvement, and that basically is public engagement, and we've had several. The first was an online visual preference survey. It was conducted to gather thoughts and opinions on the design features, and the survey received over 219 responses. The second was the virtual open house. And again, it was an online open house that shared the status of the project and requested input from the community on the general direction of the amendments. There were over 477 views on the virtual open house, and we received 43 responses to the questions that were raise. And generally, there was high level of support for the proposed approach to the development code amendments. And finally, we had an in-person public open house at the time period that was allowed for that. That was last July, that showcased draft code language specific to residential design. And we had over 20 community members attend the open house and provided input on the residential design standards for all the housing types. I also want to stress in regards to citizen involvement, the Planning Commission, your body acted as the advisory committee for this project, and you've been working diligently in implementation of the residential design standards. And since December of last year, 2020, there has been 15 Planning Commission work session on the residential design standards with opportunity for public involvement. Furthermore, City Council held 2 work sessions briefing on the proposed standards with opportunity for public involvement. The last criteria I wanted to showcase was Goalsted Housing. This slide identifies the purpose of Goalsted. And the Fair Housing Board reached out to us, requested that we update the Goalsted Housing findings. And earlier today, we actually sent a revised staff report that have been amended and basically addresses the approval of the 2019-2039 housing needs analysis, that there is a deficit of land for 608 dwelling units, and that the proposed amendment will not decrease that supply of needed housing in Sherwood. But the proposed amendments are for clear and objective design standards that would allow the development community a clear path in meeting the required design standard, making it feasible for more housing construction. Public notice was completed. Notice of the applications was routed to the Division of Land and Conservation. An email notice was also sent to Metro and agency partners. Newspaper publication was also completed through the Times. Sherwood Police and Pride Disposal were the only agency comments that we received, and they basically had no comments on this proposal. So no other agencies provided any further comments. We did not receive any public comments through this round of public notice in regards to this hearing, but I'll discuss some comments that we did receive through other public engagement process that we went through. So the community comments that we did receive through the various engagement that we've had since we've been working on this for quite a while. We did receive a formal letter from Matt Shui and Marilyn Mays, and they expressed concerns with additional design guidelines. And also we did receive comments from Riverside Homes, questioning vesting and goal post. And I do want to address that at this time and let everyone know that the city attorney has reviewed subdivision vesting rights and have determined that Oregon Revised Statute 92.040 would apply to the proposed residential design standards. As a result, construction of a subdivision would only be subject to a code in place at the time of the subdivision application, unless the subdivision approval has expired. So in regards to the subdivision vesting, as just a FYI, we have about 300 potential lots, several subdivisions that would create over 300 that have received preliminary approval and would not be subject to these residential standards based on ORS 92.040. The other in-person open house responses that we received were comments that basically identified that the design elements were too prescriptive and that there needed to be more design options for the development community to utilize. So we have actually updated the list that added more elements for choice to make it easier. The other key aspect was parking needs. Was identified as a community need, and we will definitely address that with the implementation of the middle housing choices in 2022. Matt Shree and Marilyn Mays pretty much had concerns in regards to those design standards, and you know, based on the visual preference survey and online open house, the responses that we received from individuals were pretty much were supportive in regards to the community design standards that we are actually proposing. So staff recommends that based on the findings that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval of the text amendments to the Sherwood City Council. Planning Commission definitely have alternatives in regards to their decisions today. Approve it and recommend approval to, or approve the findings and recommend approval to City Council, modify the findings, or modify the findings and deny it, or continue the public hearing. I believe that should, yep, that concludes my staff report and can answer any questions you may have. So let me stop my presentation.
So before we, so the staff is acting as applicants. So this is part of your 30-minute presentation and rebuttal. And we can ask questions. I think it should be more procedural questions so that we can get the public testimony. I understand that the letters were presented to us during work session, but this is our first evidentiary hearing. And I would ask either Erica or you to read the first 4 minutes of the letters were presented to us, and we received copies of those in our email. But I think it would be appropriate, because this is the official hearing, that the letters, 4 minutes of each, be read into the record. So I don't know if you want to do that, or if Erica, you wanted to do that so that they're on there. And then I was going to ask if within the staff report you responded to the, if the goalpost answer was given in writing to the applicant, or if that's part of the testimony or part of the staff report.
It was.
I was just going to say procedurally, staff can absolutely read those letters, but procedurally they don't need to be read to be in the record. They are in the record if they were emailed to you. The reason why we read them out loud is because we don't have the opportunity for people to come to the public hearing and provide testimony, but everybody is also allowed to submit letters that are in the record. So I just wanted to make that really clear that it is in the record, but you're welcome to have it read as well.
Well, thank you for clarification. I do understand that it's in the record, but our meeting rules say that we will read the first 4 minutes. So I wanted to make sure that, because this is our first evidentiary hearing for this item, that we do get those 4 minutes read for the public's benefit.
Okay, I could definitely, oh, Erica.
There she is.
I was going to say too, Joy, I have the letters that maybe you do the first one, I can take the second one.
Sure, I could definitely do that.
There's 3 of them, because the third one is from Riverside Homes.
That's right.
Well, there's actually there's only 2. The first is from Matt Shree and Marilyn Mays.
Oh, it's One
Yeah,
letter,
it's
two
one
people.
letter, right. And the second is from Riverside Homes. And the third were just general comments from the open house
Okay,
that
that
we
makes,
wanted to express that that was what we were hearing. So
Okay.
let me, actually, it's Exhibit C. So I'll just read it.
the first 4 minutes, yeah.
Okay. Dear Sherwood Planning, we were invited and attended the Residential Design Standards Open House on July 29th, 2021. We appreciate the desire to make Sherwood a comfortable and healthy place to live. As we have some concerns about the additional design guidelines being developed to the state's new Housing Choice Bill 2001 program, we would like to express some of our thoughts here. First, in attempting to understand the community's preference, the visuals preference survey, the survey had only 219 people. This number is only 1% of Sherwood's population and probably even a smaller percentage if you count all the people from surrounding communities who spend time in and value Sherwood. We believe it would be a mistake to make any design guidelines based on an almost meaningless number of people in Sherwood's growing population. Second, although the theme of an opportunity to shape the look and feel of new neighborhoods and create more transitional types of housing that are compatible within existing neighborhood seems admirable, the proposed added guidelines go too far without a proper or solid base of reason. The added guidelines will result in arguments and constant reconsidering of rules because people disagree with seemingly arbitrary design rules based on taste. The added guide has also made an unspecific assumption as we heard at the planning open house, that we want to keep Sherwood. This seems like a rather restrictive guideline, although if it used, then the plan should state more specifically what is Sherwood. For example, is it the Sherwood of a century ago and its desire for brick, or is the Sherwood of the 1950s and 60s with ranch houses and predominantly white inhabitants, or the Sherwood of honored original inhabitants, the Tualatans, or should Sherwood be of the currently more and move culturally diverse and exciting community that it is becoming? Of course, to pick and define periods which is Sherwood seem impossible and certain to come up short. And an attempt to designate exactly what Sherwood is to look like might be of value to a small European town which exists only by tourism and its view from the port, but not for the diverse economy and population of the city. And we believe the plan's current desire to keep things as they are because of current tastes will just stagnate every part of life in Sherwood and not allow the new discoveries and developments from happening that we'll need in our built environment. Third, with the design guidelines, it seems that the planning department is both reaching into areas that are already addressed by other rules, and they are not using what we think might be of their expertise. It seems much of the guides for amount of windows, doors, and such are already determined by building codes regarding light and ventilation, access, fire, and life safety. And the plan's attempt to add more layers on these, which only perceive common tastes, seems wasteful. Much energy will be put into these guidelines only to be thrown aside because of weak, unsupported value. It also seems that the city's planners may know from their education more scientific or academic studies that show reason to making guidelines for building and environmental design. For example, there may be studies of how humans react to various qualities of public space, semi-public space, semi-private space, and private space, which could give us guidelines for design of our streets, walks, porches, yards, and building walls. We believe the people of Sherwood might uphold design guidelines if they had a more scientific reason for a healthier environment. In closing, we feel Sherwood's current building design guidelines need much more thought and much more community input before laying down any rules. That's it ends with thank you very much.
Thank you. And that was right at 4 minutes. So Erica?
Yep. So this public testimony comes from Nikki Munson, Land Acquisition Manager from Riverside Homes. She states in her email here, the cost of vertical house construction goes into a development pro forma when a developer is determining if a project works or does not work. Architectural standards of the homes are a material component to the cost of vertical construction. Developers understand that all bets are off until land use is approved. By adopting a new architectural standard and then not allowing vesting of projects that received land use approval under older code, the city is moving the material goalpost to a developer very late in the game. Our understanding is in other jurisdictions is that the requirements of the vertical improvements are vested under the code that was in place at the time land use was approved. In this case, it is even worse because the city has conditioned us to wait on another developer to finish before we can even begin site improvements. I'd like to respectfully ask staff and planning commission to reconsider. Thank you for considering our position.
And just an update in regards to that public testimony. They actually turned off the lights on me here, so I have to turn them on soon if you... I'm totally in the dark. But I will take care of that in a second. We did provide information because we were working closely with our city attorney, Josh Soper, in regards to the vesting rights. And he did determine again that they are vested. Oh, thank you. That they are vested and that we did inform the Riverside home of that finding.
Okay, thank you. All right, so there is no other public testimony and you've provided response to that, to that, so that's good. So I'll ask now if the commission has any questions of our applicant / staff. I don't see any hands raised yet, but I was hoping to get some. Okay, Commissioner Giles.
Yeah, so I know that it was in several of our work sessions, we talked about the idea of we wanted to make clear and objective standards, but did not want to stifle creativity or, giving people the design. Is it just hearing the comment and is it really clear to people that we are saying, hey, we're trying to give you some specifics. However, we want you to be creative, or is that does that need to be spelled out more? You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to figure out how to strike that balance, because we did want to encourage people to think creatively, but we also wanted to say, hey, this is the bare minimum for approval.
And I think their comments were received right after the public work session, which was held at the end of August. So since that time, we've gone through a couple of iterations on our plan. And then we've also added, as a direct result from that public open house, we added more options and design choices. So it was the letter was a bit old, but I also felt it was fair to people that are engaged in the process to have their letter read during our hearing.
Yeah, 100%. I love the comment. I'm wondering, is because I know that was our intention as a planning commission. I was wondering if it was not conveyed clear enough in, a header or bold. I'll accept the timeline explanation is given. So.
Okay. I'm going to hit some ones that I mentioned, I may or may not have got to Erica. I called Erica on the EOA, so I'm hoping these couple of quick ones made it to Joy. On the Exhibit A, page 16, in dwelling types, the dwelling unit is within dwelling types, and I believe that dwelling unit should be a definition all by itself, not a subset of dwelling types.
Okay, we can definitely make that change.
That would be one quick change. Another quick change is, and some of my examples, page 30 and page 35. We are at best inconsistent, at worst incomplete in our description of the applicable which elements this goes through, because sometimes we say single detached, sometimes we say single detached duplex, sometimes we say single detached and townhomes. And this document, its entire intent is to be all residential housing types with the exception of multifamily, because multifamily is specifically defined in our code to be reviewed under the commercial design guidelines. So I would propose that staff comb through this document one time and change every reference to single detached and duplex and townhomes, and to be the phrase all residential housing types excluding multifamily. This affords us two things. One is we have consistency throughout the document so that it applies to all residential housing types. And when we add the middle housing next year, we don't have to change the code again because it will be already in place for all residential types.
Definitely, we can do that.
And on that
Chair Simpson, real quick on that comment, just on that point, I like that idea. That's a great idea. The only thing I thought about immediately was cottage clusters will come into play next year, and would we have to? Is there a way to write this to make sure that's not factors? So maybe it's just like all types except multifamily or cottage clusters, because I know those get a whole separate. I mean, those are going to get kind of a separate treatment, right?
In the design elements, but some of the other standards would apply to them still. So good call. When we get to cottage clusters, we may have to, because you're right, setbacks and the parking orientation is a little different for cottage clusters. Yeah.
I like where you're going. I do like what you're trying to do. I want to kind of anticipate a little bit, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. I love it. That will help clean it up.
Okay.
Okay. And on that note, there was a memo that I guess starting back on the staff report, which is page 8, and other places within this, and this was concern that Councilor Scott and I had raised from the beginning, that this process is 100% independent of House Bill 2001. And so in the staff report on packet page 8, beginning with F in the background, it talks about the House Bill 2002 requires cities to allow for middle housing. That has nothing to do with our residential design standards. At the beginning of the 4th paragraph, House Bill 2002 requires that all middle housing be reviewed. Again, we're not doing House Bill 2001, we're doing residential design standards. And there were a couple other places where it's referencing that this is a House Bill 2001 action, and House Bill 2001 is the action that we're taking next year. And I do understand that the process for the open house combined these two items when we started the process, but then we went down 2 tracks, one for residential design standards that ran concurrently with our residential design standards. So I'd ask again if we can update the background to remove the House Bill 2001 references, because it becomes confusing because people think we're doing this because we're trying to do something for middle housing. We could have done this project 5 years ago, and it could have potentially looked just like it does today because we were looking for design standards that could be applied evenly across our community. So if anybody has any comments on that, that's my concern, is that we're creating confusion by adding House Bill 2001 as the catalyst for our residential design standards, which isn't the only reason we were doing this.
Well, so my comment would be, you're right. It's not the only reason we're doing this, but it is a reason we're doing this in my mind. And I agree, this has been on people's minds for a while, and this probably would have been tackled without House Bill 2001, but at least as far as I'm concerned, I would have looked at residential design standards differently without the anticipation of 2001 that we have to try to deal with, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I see what you're saying. These are 2 separate tracks. We don't want to confuse, like we could do this way, but they wouldn't have looked different. My recommendations and thoughts along this line probably would have been different had it not been for 2001 coming down the tracks. So
Okay.
I think that background is appropriate to some extent in my view.
Okay. I would ask that it not be the first item in the background, and the inference that House Bill 2001 is requiring us to do this, that I think is misleading.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree.
And a little bit of background that the open house started together, but the history of this project doesn't start with House Bill 2001. It starts with a recognized need within the community years ago, and not having time on our plate or staff resources allocated to it. So.
All right, we can definitely tweak that background report a bit to reflect that.
And then there is a typo on the last paragraph on page 8. It says, though the commission and council's work sessions, instead of through the commission and council's work sessions. Then I have,
Commissioner Simpson, which page did you say? Page 8 under?
It's
goal?
packet page 8. It's staff report page 2. It says through the, it should say through the commission and council's work sessions, but it says though.
Thank you.
And then I have 2 hopefully easy ones I want to throw out. And this is just me asking someone to help me remember. And I think I think I remembered that on page 58 we talked about ADUs, and that's 58 of the residential design standards, where we're dealing with accessory dwelling units. I had some note about maximum yard coverage, but I think we had a discussion that we just wanted to ensure that accessory dwelling units met the setback of the underlying zone, and that there was no concern about lot coverage. Does anybody have any question, concern? Did I hit the mark when I said as long as we meet the setbacks in the underlying zone, the intent of lot coverage is met? I see Commissioner Giles nodding his head. We're all good then?
That's what I remember as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Kai. And then in my final reading of this on page 46, I ran into something that was of great concern as it relates to a code that we have in place already. on page 46 of the document, it says, in lieu of a new public street or available connection to an existing public street, a private 20-foot minimum driveway without on-street parking can be built, and this is for townhomes. And I think that this is under the town, this is additional criteria for townhomes. And to me, that flies in the face of what we've heard through the open houses, is that people are concerned about parking, and that streets that are too narrow to have parking on them have created more problems, and that we should build our streets to a width that accommodates parking, at least on one side, if not both sides. And so I would ask the commission, I understand this is old code and we hadn't seen it before, but since all of the design criteria are up before us, does anybody else have any concern about creating new private streets for townhomes that have no parking on them?
Seems like a bad idea.
Yeah.
I thought we'd address that, frankly. I'm surprised that it's coming up at this stage. I remember talking about it, but maybe I'm getting confused.
Yeah. So, Joy, is there a way for us?
Let me bring it up. I actually created a slide for us, so let me just see if I can bring it up. There you go. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So again, this section is additional townhome design standards under vehicular circulation. And the way that it currently, or it before in the townhome section, it basically allowed it where it allows a private 20-foot minimum driveway without on-street parking and built to a public improvement standard is allowed for infill properties. So we've modified it where we've deleted the infill and also modified it so it doesn't call out local street, neighborhood route, or collector.
So I'm confused. So all streets shall be constructed in accordance with applicable city standards in the transportation plan. In lieu of a new public street, a private 20-foot driveway without on-street parking is allowed. I mean, I realize I didn't read all the words, but why are we allowing them to build a, do we limit how many units they can have on it? Or is it, because it says in excess of 30 units require a second access. So we're saying that they can build 29 units on a private street with no on-street parking. Is that what would be allowed by this code?
Well, it was allowed before.
Right. I am saying I understand that, but it might not be right. It seems wrong. So I would ask the commission if we think that allowing them to build a private driveway should be allowed, and if so, should we have a limit to the number of units that would be allowed on that private driveway? Is there a restriction in our transportation code someplace else that says private driveways are only so many feet long?
Not to my knowledge. but I would have to defer and go back to the TSP just to double check.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Trying
think the TSP speaks to private streets.
Private
It's only going to be
streets, no.
speaking to public streets.
Okay. Well, having sat through so many public hearings where people are really upset about parking,
Mhm.
and we're not accommodating that at all with this, I think that this minimum driveway with on-street parking should be either removed or limited to one townhome only or something. Does any other commissioner want to chime in on this?
So if this required parking on one side of the street or driveway, would that alleviate or improve the issue?
Well, I guess if anything's better than no parking.
Yeah.
I know that in
I'm trying to picture what this would look like. So is this like a case where maybe the garage of the townhome is in the back or something, and so you need a little driveway to enter from the street, kind of drive around to the back of the townhome and park in your garage? Is that what this is? And
no,
without it, it's just everybody pulls into their driveway directly to their garage facing the public street?
yes, that's what it is. So you would have a row of townhomes. You could have townhomes on both sides of the street, six in a building block, right?
Mhm.
On both sides of the street, and everybody has to park in their garage and or their driveway.
Mhm.
And there would be no on-street parking because it's a private driveway with only 20-foot width, just enough for 2 cars to pass.
Oh, okay.
And
So we're shrinking the street by adding a private driveway.
correct.
Whereas if they didn't do the private driveway, they'd still have to park. They'd still have the garage and their own driveway. It's just in that case, you'd still have street parking too.
Correct.
So this would basically say, well, if you choose to do a driveway, just go around the building. Now all of a sudden you don't need any street parking. Yeah, I'm not good with that.
I think that they need to build to the TSP standards when they build a private street.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I turned the light off on you earlier. Oh, okay, go.
Unless I mean, I can see where a private driveway servicing one building or 2 buildings, when you have a flag lot or a dead end street with that abuts something, there might be a need for a private driveway. That would be narrower, but I think that allowing up to 30 units to not have any on-street parking, we are creating a disaster.
Is there a stricter definition maybe for private driveway and private road? Or is it the same?
I don't know.
That's probably for staff.
29 units does seem excessive for this.
And I think maybe I'm going to chime in and just, I think there's more history to these townhome design standards. The townhome design standards predate me, which I've been with the city for over 16 years, and I know that they existed before I got here. And staff at the time kind of struggled with townhome versus apartment and multifamily. And so I wonder if some of these standards weren't originally envisioning these townhomes being part of a multifamily type of development instead of a single family type of development. And then the infill standards that I see crossed out, that happened probably 15 years ago. And again, it might have been modifying this, some townhome standards, we created infill standards at the time and tried to pigeonhole, those infill standards that we did so that they didn't mess with the townhome standards, and now we're doing residential design standards and moving things around. And I'm just wondering if during the course of these years of iterations of these townhome standards, if something's kind of gotten mistranslated over time.
I would even say that we should just remove the option to put in a public driveway, because if someone wants to put in, is there allowance within the code that two houses can be serviced by a private driveway, but no more?
Correct. And it has to be 20 feet minimum for fire life safety.
Right. I don't think to me, I am not comfortable with a 20-foot driveway and 29 townhomes. I think if there is an opportunity for a townhouse to go at the end of a street and a single private driveway for one townhome is appropriate, I would feel sort of comfortable, but that means that we're pushing the parking for the that onto the neighbors next door. So it's even a hard press for that. I would be inclined to think we should remove it altogether. Does anybody else have any other comments, yay or nay on that?
Can townhomes, under the current code, be built right up to the street with no driveway at all? Or is that, I can't remember.
Yeah, if they're alley loaded.
Okay. Oh, if they're alley loaded, meaning there's still a spot in the back.
Right.
Okay.
Well, then there's no parking in the back because they have a 5-foot setback. So in that case, there'd be an alley and parking in the garage, and then on the front there would just be a front yard and no parking.
Or curb parking.
Or curb parking.
There would be
on-street parking.
There would be no on-street parking because that's what this code says. We would not have any on-street parking.
They'd be moving the parking off the street onto this new driveway. So it's trying to still require some kind of parking. It's just putting on a private driveway, but then that really constrains the street. We're talking 30 units, and that's pretty narrow.
Yeah, I think that
it feels like we're essentially just trying to avoid the parking problem over by Target there, where it's just the townhomes and there's tons of cars and everything's packed in there, and it just seems like I think I'm with you, Gene, in terms of maybe removing it or reducing the number.
I can't even imagine the development that's over there if it did not have that on-street parking. It would be impossible to navigate what's going on over there if they didn't have those streets in front of them to park in. So staff, what is our best course of action? Do we remove the whole thing or limit it to one building unit? Or do we even have to have a private street availability?
I think you can go either way on this one, Chair Simpson. I think you can eliminate it, quite possibly altogether, or you could limit it to, one townhouse block or row. Another thing we can do is staff, we could take this off the table this evening. We can review it, look at it, make some suggested changes, and come back with this in phase 2 to allow more time.
I think if we're going to do that, I would like to remove the option for someone to submit an application for a private driveway with no on-street parking. Remove that option altogether and then revisit it in phase 2 if we need to add it back. Because I think that's the safer bet, because if we get a townhouse development with a private driveway between now and then, we could end up with 29 townhomes with no parking, especially in some of the development areas that are going through quickly. Since this is a kind of a not just a Scrivener's change, it's a change in what we've discussed previously. Can we take a little side vote on this to see if there's any commissioners, if we've gone too far afield? So,
And to clarify, the vote would be to remove the paragraph entirely at this time.
correct.
Okay.
Just for the sake of discussion, we can't require both, right? On-street parking and a driveway for townhomes.
We cannot require on-street parking, correct? We can only require driveway parking.
Got it.
And garage, yeah. All right, just a thumbs up or a head nod, I guess, or I guess just call everybody. Commissioner Bantz, are you okay with the removing of the paragraph?
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Giles,
Yes.
Commissioner Widola,
I'm a little torn, but I think I'm okay with it.
okay, Vice Chair Kai,
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
okay.
With removing it.
So staff, it will make note that we're going to remove that paragraph and allow you to come back at the second go around with any proposed language or fatal flaw that we had. And obviously, if there's something that we missed and it comes up, council will be, when this goes up to council for their review, they can add back the paragraph in its entirety or do whatever council wants to do with it. So, and then my last item that I had in here has to do with pages 78 and 79. And that's about the variances. And I called Erica on this because it's first off, I think it's not correct as it's written in the draft to us. And the language that's on these 2 pages is not consistent. So if we were to take the document as a whole and look at section 1684 variances, and I'm going to work backwards because it's the clean one. Class A variance is that's the type 4 variance. That's what would come before a planning commission. So I've asked, for clarity's sake, that we change it to say not just Class A variance, but Class A variance and in parentheses type 4, because type 4 indicates that that's a type 4 hearings process that comes before a planning commission. Type 5 goes before city council. Type 3 is a hearings officer. So those are already defined things within our code. And then Class B variances, that is in parentheses now a type 2. And that is a staff level decision that is a hearings notice. And both of these are written with a title. Item 1 is generally, item 2 is the approved process, and item 3 is the approval criteria. So there's a format that's being followed in the Class B variances and the Class A variances. Then when we get to adjustments, that's now a type 1, and the format of the language changes. It doesn't have a generally item 1, it has an applicability statement, and then it goes right into the approval criteria. So I think for consistency and for ease of the user, they need to be written with the same understanding that this is when these are generally applied, the approval process, and the approval criteria. And then within these, just the reformatting of the words, there are, again, starting with Class A. Class A variance allows them to vary a standard for 3 or fewer lots. But it doesn't, because it's a type 4, it's almost like a PUD, right? So they can do as many standard variances. Can they vary design standards, yard setbacks, everything through a type 4 hearings process, correct? Erica?
My understanding is that it's only applied, the maximum is 3 lots during a subdivision process.
So they can, but how many standards can they vary? They can vary 1 standard for 3 lots or as many standards as they want. So it says the Class A variance procedure may be used to modify a standard for 3 or fewer lots.
A standard.
So they modify 1 standard.
1 standard for a maximum of 3 lots.
So if someone brings in a subdivision of 15 lots, they can only have 3 lots and they can vary 1 standard. And if
otherwise they would be looking at a PUD process where you can vary, multiple standards.
And that would go to a type 5.
That would go.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and so in this case, they can do 3 front yard setbacks, 3 rear yard setbacks, or 3 garage door variances.
Yes.
Okay.
Does it all have to be the same?
No, it could be different.
Different per lot?
Yeah,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
But you just have a maximum of 3 lots within that subdivision.
And just
Okay.
1 per lot?
1 per lot and 3 lots maximum. Okay. So when we go back to the type 1 and type 2, we can do, and this is where there's so many percentages and they're not in the same format when I was trying to compare them. But in the type 2, it says front yard setbacks can be changed 20%. Interior setbacks can be changed 20%. Dimensions can be changed by 20%. And residential design standards can be changed between 10 and 20%. And my first comment was I thought that interior setbacks or the side yard setbacks were not to be, we were not going to deviate on. I thought council's direction was no side yard setbacks would be reduced.
Council direction was no interior side yard setback can be adjusted or varied. No
Okay.
variance or adjustments.
Okay, so item D at the top of page 79 says that we can do up to a 20% reduction. So I think that from council's directive is needing to be adjusted. That we can't, that we don't want to do interior.
Right.
And then the 20% reduction on the residential design standards. I know we had the conversation before that. I don't know other commissioners and what the council's thing was, but I was only comfortable with 10% and we're going back to 20%. And I thought we were going to do 5% for adjustments and 10% for variances. And now, because it's easy to take a 5% and change it to a 10%. But if we tell people at the beginning they get a 20% design variance, and then we say, we're just kidding, we're going to take it back to 10%. That's the hard way to go. I would rather say, okay, 10%'s too too restrictive, let's increase it to 20%, because what we're saying right now is our residential design standards, we want a maximum of, my example is 60% is the maximum on a garage frontage. And we're going to allow it to be varied 20%. So we're going to now say that 72% of the garage width is acceptable. And that's what a 20% variance means in a garage width. For window coverage, we go from 15% down to 12%. It doesn't seem like a lot, but we don't all really know what, I mean, we have some examples about what 15% looks like, but I was more, you know, thinking 20% for window glazing, but we knocked it back to 15. So I guess I'm putting angst out there to say I would like to reconsider that our residential design standard adjustments are 5% and the variances are up to 10%. Anybody object or agree?
I don't recall, honestly, what we've talked about this stuff seems like a million times. We've been talking about this document for, I'm wondering, I mean, maybe we recorded it in minutes somewhere where we kind of talked through that.
I mean, I have recollection of this too, of this already being resolved, of like, this is like deja vu, but where 5 and 10 was what was agreed upon. And then has this come up at council?
Yes, I did bring this up at council, asking for the reduction of adjustments and variances to the percentages that Commissioner Kai, you just remembered, and also identified by Chair Simpson. And basically, they felt that adjustments and variances the percentage should still remain the same. And their main concern was interior side yard not happening and not being allowed, and not really adjusting the percentages and adjustments or variances.
So Councilor Scott has.
But it's up to the commission. The commission can make a recommendation and move forward, you know, with that change.
I mean, and I think since you know, this will be coming back to council, I think if we err on the side of caution and, you know, go with the 5 and 10 and let them, if they want to change it to 10 to 20, that, you know, that's within their discretion, but 5 and 10 is what I'm more comfortable with.
Okay, Commissioner Widola, do you have a comfort level at 5 and 10 or 10 and 20? Or
I agree with Commissioner Kai's comments. I mean, I think let's 5 and 10, and then if City Council wants to change, we can let them do that.
Commissioner Bance, your comment?
Actually, I'm curious. Councilor Scott had his hand up and then he disappeared.
We're in hearing, not
because
work
we're in hearing.
sessions,
That's right.
so
That's
he
right.
he can't comment.
Okay, right. I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. We'll pull back if we need to.
Okay, Commissioner Giles, do you want to weigh in on 5 and 10% as the recommendation we make to council? And I think he's muted. Okay, so I got four out of 5 so far. So we'll go ahead and direct staff to do between 5 and 10% as a Class B variance, and up to 5% for an adjustment, and Then on D, have the interior setback removed as we did, as suggested at the council work session.
Okay. And the percentages are very specific to residential design standards, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great.
The 20% decrease to dimensional standards. I haven't seen anything that I don't recall council having any heartache, and we haven't had any. The only thing would have been negative if we were changing the length of the driveway so a car couldn't fit in there, but the driveway setbacks are 20 feet. If we reduce it by 20%, that still makes it 16 feet, and most vehicles will fit in 16 feet with, just the bumper over the driveway on your SUV, I guess.
There's still a process, still has to get approved, still a variance.
There's no hearing.
Right.
It's the staff. All that has to happen is they have to put in a request to staff. Staff sends a letter to the neighbor saying that, or applicant sends a letter to the neighbor saying that they're going to reduce the setback, and then it happens because it's a clear and objective decision. There would be no. I can't think of a reason why it would be denied. I can't imagine a reason why staff would deny a setback like that.
So approval kind of overstates what's really happening there, right? It's more like, it's allowed. Let me just make sure nobody complains first.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And in the 10% variance, there's not even notice to the neighbors. They just come in and say, we want our driveway 10% shorter, and it happens. And they have to pay a fee, I'm assuming.
So Erica, it talks about the variance requested is required due to lot configuration or other conditions of the site. Does not result in removal of trees. Is there some hardship that the developer has to prove?
Yes. And so when we look at these variances in the type 2 administrative function, we do look at, have they exhausted all their remedies for solutions? For the variance. We want to know that they have taken all the appropriate, they've looked at, all the different ways that, the problem could be solved without applying for a variance.
So it's not just a rubber stamp necessarily.
No, it's not necessarily a rubber stamp.
Right, but the option of making the house smaller could have been an option, but they didn't choose that. They just wanted to move the lot line or the setback, right? That's, I don't know.
No, it's a good hypothetical though with the driveway thing. I think it's a good hypothetical, to talk through how that process would work, because that's an option here.
Yeah. If the only option is to make the house smaller, would you require a developer to make the house smaller to meet the driveway without doing an adjustment or a variance?
If it's a new house, new development, yes.
Okay. So there is some judgment then, sounds like, from staff put into this or have you reasonably tried your best?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
We look at all the exhaustive, remedies that are out there.
And I think that's an important consideration because, before anything is allowed where an impact is placed more so on a neighbor, even if it's a new development on a neighbor that's not there yet, just the effort to make sure that every solution that can impose simply just within that existing lot, I think is the important factor to consider before allowing it to impact adjacent properties.
Right. And I do have to, I do want to mention here that, you know, we don't see a lot of adjustments or type 2 variances, you know, come through the planning door. So we're doing a good job when we do, you know, site design review, that, you know, we're not getting these applications in.
You're just explaining it to the applicant, providing them an opportunity to make the right choice before they pay a fee anyway. I think part of it is education. I mean, the education, an opportunity for education will prevent a lot of denials or upset customers at your counter. So that's good to hear.
And in that sense, it makes it easier to maybe go back to the 10 to 20% down the road.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we see how these are kind of coming through and it's bothering us a lot to keep looking at these things as a commission, and, you know, staff knows what they're doing, you know, and we're reasonably mitigating, 5 to 10 might end up being a little bit low. I could foresee that, you know, but since these are new standards, you know, maybe we look at them more closely, you know.
Excellent.
I had a question on the interior setback, is it, and per council's direction, does it just apply to side setbacks will not be adjusted, or is it rear setback as well?
Just side,
Just side.
interior side yard setbacks.
Okay.
The language on D says interior setbacks, but it has rear in the verbiage itself. Rear yard setbacks.
We will fix that sentence to make sure that no interior side yard variance or adjustments are allowed.
Okay.
Okay, but it would still be up to 20% for rear. Then.
I thought we're at 5.
Right.
Aren't we at 5 and 10?
Well, 5 and 10's for design guidelines.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
rear.
By the way, I apologize for departure. I had to actually reboot my machine. I dropped off the call during that. For some reason it wasn't muting and unmuting, and then it crashed my camera. And so anyway, did I miss a vote on that?
we were doing a head nod that says, are you comfortable with changing the residential design standard variances to 5 and 10%?
Okay. All right. I'm okay with that.
Excellent.
We solved world hunger and you weren't here to be part of it. Sorry. Your name's not on it.
All right.
So in both.
It is. It just says next to your name absent. So.
So in both adjustments and variances, interior setbacks. So I think it would be more clear to have it broken out that says interior setbacks are not allowed to be reduced, and then rear setbacks 20% or 10% in the respective. And then in the adjustments under the A adjustments type 1, if it could be formatted in the similar language as the Class B variances, so that there's generally an approval process and an approval criteria, that would make it more clear for someone using the document.
All right, we will definitely work on that. There's edits.
Okay. So setting that aside, you know, that language change, the other comments or discussion that we've had are kind of like wordsmithing throughout the document about using the phrase all residential housing types excluding multifamily, and the section on the townhomes. just ask the commission, I guess, are we comfortable approving it to allow staff to send the final document to council this evening? Or do you feel that you want to continue, not the deliberation, but continue the hearing and just take a final vote of the language that's presented to us? So we would close the public hearing and not take any other deliberation and vote on the final language, or vote on it with the presumption that the staff's final language would be edited as we've discussed it. So Commissioner Bantz?
Yeah, that's tricky because I mean, there's a part of me that wants to get this done, get it off to council, and I think that staff could do a pretty good job writing that up and getting it to them so that council doesn't have to spin their wheels trying to fix more things. On the other hand, in some of these are pretty simple. Like I think item D easily, you know, and some of the changes 10 to 20% to 5 to 10%, stuff like that. The one where you're replacing a lot of words throughout the whole thing, kind of, you know, where it says single family and townhome and all. I'm not sure, because I haven't done like a word search, just how extensive that would be and if that would have unforeseen kind of downstream impacts. Like maybe there's something that maybe we didn't catch in there, or might get weird. Council would have to get bogged down on. That concerns me a little bit.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe just, I don't know, does staff have an idea of how frequent that occurs? Would it be, do you foresee that being overly cumbersome, or are you like, oh, Dan, you're all wet and it won't be a problem, it should be very easy? That's kind of the hang up for me. I think everything else is pretty straightforward.
What are the chances that this will pass with the changes as is from the council? Because if we're going to have to make the changes anyway and revisit it, should we just wait and do the vote later?
No.
Yeah.
But once so our process this evening will be, we have three options. One is we can continue the hearing and keep the record open. We can continue the hearing and close the record, and the only thing that we would do at our next meeting would be to provide any wordsmithing changes. We could not introduce any new ideas, and we could not introduce any changes to the document that changed the intent of the code. All we could do is confirm or deny, head nodding, that the language was edited as we intended it to be edited. Or we can approve it with the assumption that staff will make the edits on our behalf and present it to council. Any of those three scenarios does not change the date of the council hearing. It's been noticed to be correct unless we continue it through two hearings. But if we conclude our business at our next meeting, council's hearing date is still December whatever, right?
In that case, let's take a look at it again one more time just to make sure it's nice and clean for him.
Is Joy shaking her head? Did I miss?
Yeah, yes. In regards to council, it is tentatively scheduled, I believe, for the 20th. No, for the 16th.
It's tentatively scheduled for November 16th. So
Yeah. Okay.
We could, Planning Commission could review it on the 2nd again to give it kind of, you know, the final blessing before it moves on to City Council.
Be the 9th, wouldn't it?
The 9th.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's a week.
Oh,
just 1 week before.
You're right. It is on the 9th.
So the only thing,
packets for council are-
It would be due technically on the 5th.
right. Technically on the 5th, it goes out to the public on.
Well, Sylvia has to
Do you-
post, generally she posts it a week before, especially if there's an ordinance. So it will have to be posted on the 9th is
On
my
the 9th.
understanding for the agenda.
So I thought that we had time for a continued hearing on this item.
Well,
Does-
you do, you just, the council hearing wouldn't happen on the 16th then.
But we
Yeah.
don't want to delay this anymore. I don't-
Right. And well, how does staff feel about, I mean, are the changes that we've requested pretty clear? I mean, feel like, would you really feel like, boy, I'd like the commission to look at it one more time before? Okay. I get
No,
that.
they're pretty
Shaking head.
They're
Maybe
pretty
a
straightforward.
compromise that I might offer is
Sure.
go ahead and have staff make the changes and get the council packet
Yeah.
submitted by November 5th, but still bring it to the planning commission on November 9th, or put it in your packet. And that way, if you see anything that staff missed, then staff can just make those changes verbally at the council meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's a great compromise. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. I misunderstood. I thought we had an opportunity to continue this hearing and the next hearing.
You do.
You do.
It just pushes back city council.
Well,
Yeah, there's no deadline on these,
But-
so you
but-
can
but
continue
that's-
this.
to me, that wasn't an option because.
Sure, you could screw up the council's plans, Chair Simpson. That's an option.
Well, I cause enough havoc here. I don't need to add to
Yeah.
their angst. Yeah.
I think this is a reasonable solution to me. I think it makes sense.
All right.
Are
Commissioner.
we still in the question period or are we in comments now? I can't
We-
remember where we're at on that.
Well, we haven't closed the public hearing because that was the point, is we're still entertaining new ideas, still offering edits and suggestions, and entertaining whether we are going to continue the hearing or close the
Right.
public hearing. So are there any other questions, edits, changes for staff? All right, then we will go ahead and close the public hearing and move to deliberation. Or entertain a motion.
I think my only comment is it's been a long time coming. We've worked on this a lot.
Absolutely.
Kind of like in the last public hearing, in case there's watchers, viewers, well, although we have talked a lot about this in the last hour and a half or so, but we've spent a lot of time looking over this, a lot of time considering it. To me, in light of what's coming as well with 2001, but also just, how do the people of Sherwood want their community to look? That's what design standards are. There's been a lot of public involvement to the extent that we can. I mean, I do appreciate comments, from the public, that kind of point out what was pointed out, like the preference survey of 1% of the population. I get it. Reality is people are busy. Citizens do not have time to spend, reviewing and speaking into every proposed law at every layer of government in their life. They have to live their life, and therefore we have representative government to try to take care of some of those things, and volunteers like us in the Planning Commission and try to represent the city and hopefully, that's of course that's council's role as well. So, but to the extent possible, I think we've done as much outreach as we can to get feedback and views, and it's been pretty extensive. So, I guess it's just a comment that I have on this. I think we've all worked pretty hard to get to this point.
Thank you.
So would you like to make a motion?
Well, as chair, it's awkward for me to move an item and chair.
I know. I just don't have the wording in front of me. Commissioner Kai, do you have that?
Yeah, I'm looking at that. And what, Julie, can you just quickly restate what the solution was?
The statement is that our action will be completed formally tonight, and that as citizens, we can comment on the application and staff will take it to council on our behalf, but it is
So
not a formal planning commission action after we vote tonight.
okay, so we will close and forward this to city council, assuming we all approve that with the modifications stated in the hearing.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry, we were shaking our heads, but maybe you didn't see that.
I just wasn't sure if there was anything different that I needed to include in the language of the motion, but so that makes sense. Okay.
Sorry, I was nodding and Erica gave you a thumbs up, so we were. My apologies.
I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for residential design standards, project number LU 2021-016 PA, based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and conditions in the staff report with the modifications as stated in this hearing.
All right, it's been moved.
Second.
All right, it's been seconded. All right, it's been moved and seconded that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval for Sherwood, LU 2021-016 PA residential design standards as modified through our hearing this evening. Is there any further comments or questions? And staff, for one note, the discussion on page 78 and 79 is also on page 85. The percentages will need to be updated there too. All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Widola?
Yay. Yes.
Vice Chair Kai?
Yay.
Commissioner Giles?
Yes.
Commissioner Bantz?
Aye, yes.
Chair Simpson, yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we as citizens can comment when we get our final draft before our next Planning Commission hearing, right? Thank you very much,
Yes.
staff.
As mere citizens.
As mere citizens. as
Yep.
very, very well educated and well read citizens.
Yep.
I never did so much reading as a mere citizen.
Kind of goes to why so few percentage of people have vested interest in making comments, because it's there's a bit of work involved.
Yeah, sure. That's why we're here. We volunteer our time to try to represent what we think the city wants.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments about representative government and how we do a lot of reading for a lot of other people. So
Right.
it's very nice. So we have one more hearing this evening. And if the hour becomes late, we can continue this because this one has not been noticed. When's the city council hearing?
We have it tentatively scheduled for November 16th.
Oh, good. Same night. So if there's an opportunity to finish it tonight. All right.
But remember, yeah, this is a legislative hearing. There's no 120-day requirement. So,
And there's no one waiting for us to do this. There's not another.
well, the citizens of the community, Jean.
And I'll also add that I don't know that the council would be heartbroken if they don't have 3 hearings on one night. But we'll do what we can, and it's possible that they may need to continue it if it does go to them on the 16th, regardless, because it's a lot for them.
If we have to, they have to, right?
Right. Yeah,
Well, and they have whatever that prevents them from going past. What's their cutoff? Is it 10 o'clock or?
I honestly can't remember. It's based on their council rules. It's either 9 or 10, but I can't remember.
I think we should just preempt that and take a little off their plate for that night.
Yeah.
All right, well, we have noticed one more hearing, so we are going to the public hearing on case file LU 2021-020 comprehensive plan update is now called to order. To maintain compliance with public meeting laws and pursuant to House Bill 4212, this meeting is being conducted electronically. The public notices for this meeting stated that citizen comments and testimony for this public hearing item had to be submitted in writing at least 24 hours in advance in order to be included in the record. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report, questions, if any, by the hearing body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. Applicant will have 30 minutes split between presentation and rebuttal. As previously noted, public testimony for this hearing was required to be submitted in advance in writing. Staff will read the first 4 minutes of comments received. The full text of the comments has been provided to the hearings body and the applicant in advance of this hearing and will be included in the record. Rebuttal from the applicant is the remainder of their 30 minutes. Final comments by staff. Questions of staff, if any, by the commission. We will then close the public hearing. No other comments will be heard from the public or the applicant, then discussion by the commission. Planning Commission's role in this decision is to forward a recommendation for action by the City Council on this matter. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again with enough detail to allow the commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this time, ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest is not in play because this is a legislative matter. And I did want to note that the hearing at the City Council is also open for public input. So for any of the 3 hearings that we had this evening, when they're presented to the City Council will also receive public testimony, and interested parties can submit their testimony to the City Council, and any testimony provided to the Planning Commission is provided in the record when it is copied to City Council. So with that being said, staff will now present the staff report on our comprehensive plan update.
All right, thank you, Chair Simpson. This is pretty exciting. This is our first public hearing on the comprehensive plan update. This has been quite a few years in the making. Before we start our presentation here, I just want to inform the commission that we did receive one public testimony yesterday from Housing Land Advocates and the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, which is going to be included as Exhibit B to the staff report. And then kind of the second thing that I want to touch on before the presentation is a heartfelt thank you. And I feel like this is the Oscar speech of planning thank yous. So first, I just want to take the time to thank City Council for recognizing the need after 30 years to update the Sherwood Comprehensive Plan. Second of all, I really want to thank the Sherwood community who participated through numerous surveys, community interviews, focus groups, our open houses, whether they were in person, pre-COVID, or online. It's really the citizens of Sherwood that, make this plan for the heart of our community. I want to give a big thanks to our consulting team of 3J, Sarah, and Enviro Issues. They really helped us to coordinate this effort over the past couple of years. And a great big heartfelt thank you to our Community Advisory Committee, who met, over 12 times during this 2-year process. They provided information on our background reports. They provided input on our public engagement activities. They reviewed the draft goals and policies in the document, and they are the ones that are really shaping how Sherwood moves forward over the next, 20 or so years here. And I also want to give a big thank you to our technical advisory committee. Again, this group of folks met over, they had over, 12 plus meetings over the last 2 years, and they were made up of our local, state, and regional agencies, and also of our surrounding cities. And they provided feedback on the draft goals and policies, and also provided, kind of what the best practices are out in the real world that, Sherwood could or should consider incorporating into our development. And lastly, I want to give a huge thank you to the Planning Commission here for reviewing this document, along the way. You've been here every step of the way. And it's all of you in the end that's going to be implementing this product. So thank you. And I'm wrapping up my Oscar speech. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ani Ismate from 3J. She's, been on board for the past 2 years, really facilitating this great work that we've done.
Great. Thank you so much, Erica. You can flip to the next slide. Good evening, Planning Commission members. Thank you again for having us this evening and entertaining the Sherwood Comp Plan. We have a short presentation for you tonight. It is a similar one to the ones that we've given to you as we've worked through the adoption process over the last couple of months. But we always like to refresh these slides. So quick agenda. I will go over just the overall adoption process approach and our timeline over the last couple of months, provide a recap of what we've done, where we've been, and what we've heard. And then we'll review each of the 6 theme areas of the comprehensive plan and some of the key or major milestones for each of those theme areas. And then we will propose that Planning Commission consider a recommendation to City Council. So that is the order of operations. So quick recap on our adoption process approach. We came to you at the beginning of June with a draft comprehensive plan document. We went through 3 work sessions with all of you and pulled together a series of revisions and final edits. We incorporated those revisions into an updated draft of the comprehensive plan, and that document was then put forth in front of you at a joint work session. I think next slide, Erica. A joint work session with City Council, where we received some final revisions and we incorporated that into a final comprehensive plan document. So that is the document that you see here tonight. This is the first of 2 hearings for the comprehensive plan, the second of which will be to City Council potentially on November 16th. And then once that goes through, we will have an adopted Sherwood 2040 comprehensive plan. So many months here. Tonight's objectives, I'll go through each of these 6 theme areas. We'll entertain any questions or any final thoughts, and then have you Planning Commission members discuss your recommendation to City Council. So recapping the overall 2040 process, you may all recall that this actually kicked off in 2018 when we set up the project with a community visioning phase. The community visioning phase was a separate contract and scope, but it occurred over the course of the entire year of 2018. And then through that community visioning phase, we spoke with many, many community members throughout that year through community conversations and focus groups and summits and events. Next slide, Erica. And that resulted in a new community vision that was adopted by City Council in early 2019, so just after that phase was wrapped up. And that has led to the foundation of the new comprehensive plan and really shaped the whole comprehensive plan process specifically. I got a little ahead of myself here, but the comprehensive plan visioning process reached hundreds of Sherwood community members and as I mentioned, developed this new framework for the comprehensive plan, was guided by a community advisory committee. So many of the same members of that community advisory committee during the visioning phase did continue on to the community advisory committee for the comprehensive plan. So there was a lot of continuity there. And yes, the vision itself was adopted by City Council in 2019 on January 15th. The next phase of the comprehensive plan update was drafting background and technical reports, and then also drafting the actual plan itself and developing policies around it. The next slide, please. While the comprehensive plan was being undertaken, I know the city also had a new EOA and an updated HNA, some of items of which you just discussed earlier tonight. So there was a lot of background work happening. You also were updating your Parks and Trails Recreation Master Plan. So a lot of good work was happening behind the scenes as the comprehensive plan itself was underway. For each of the 6 themes that were incorporated in the comp plan, we had an iterative process that was flexible and quite dynamic. So we started at the beginning of every theme with a background report and an infographic profile that delivered some of the key messages of the current conditions around the topic areas that that theme captured. We presented this information to a CAC and a TAC, and then we also engaged in some outreach activity. Each of those activities differed for every theme, just based on where we were at in reviewing the content, and also what the community had already seen or not seen. From that feedback with the CAC and the TAC, and then also a briefing with your planning commission, city council, and then a project advisory committee, we drafted policies, put those out through an online survey, whether they were draft policy language itself, or whether it was key policy ideas, and then brought that all back out to a second committee, CAC or TAC meeting, where we took in all of that feedback, revised and massaged language or policy concepts, and then shared it with Planning Commission and City Council at a joint work session. So Planning Commission and your City Council, we have been with you every step of the way. And so it's really nice to be here tonight and know that we've all seen this work play out over the years. So we are here now in the adoption phase. And I just recapped kind of the timeline of what that has looked like. So I will go ahead and move into just a few of the key ideas and activities that happened for each of these 6 theme areas. So I'll start with our first, which was titled Thriving and Diversified Economy. So some of the major policy concepts that came out of this theme area, and also out of the key activities that are listed here in bulleted in bullets here, is that a lot of the economic development policies are geared towards encouraging the development of industrial and high employment businesses to help increase the city's tax base through a faster growth rate of jobs per resident. There's also work in explicitly calling out office commercial to make the distinction from retail commercial, so that you see a little bit of tweaking of language there in the policies. And then also to provide opportunities to develop infrastructure and emerging technologies to support employment, while also ensuring access to the broader metropolitan region. So that's just an example of some of the policy ideas or language that was included in this theme area as a result of an updated economic opportunities analysis, some targeted outreach to community members that are primarily focused or engaged on economic development efforts, both in Sherwood, but then also across the region, an online survey to review these policy concepts, and then of course, review by all of our bodies, so CAC, PAC, PAT, Planning Commission, and City Council. Next slide. The second theme was around strong community, culture, and heritage. Next slide. So the topics that were covered here in this theme were really around community engagement, historic and cultural resources, as well as public, civic, and institutional spaces. The little matrix at the top I forgot to mention in the previous theme is just us think about how the topics that rose to the top through the visioning process meet the statewide planning goals that are required as part of a comprehensive plan. So some of the key activities that we did in this theme, we had a booth at a Sherwood Art Walk event. We also did some targeted focus groups with organizations that primarily focus on public involvement, volunteer activities, arts, and then also history and heritage in Sherwood specifically. We had an online survey to review some policy concepts. We also met with the Chamber of Commerce and the City Volunteer Coordinator and library staff. And of course, all of this work was reviewed by all of our bodies. Some of the major policy concepts that came through this theme area was really around creating opportunities for youth to be involved in civic affairs. So that was an item that was definitely lacking in the last comprehensive plan, and there was a big push and support for having language that supports more youth opportunities in civic affairs, and then also engaging more underrepresented communities within Sherwood itself. Those were two areas of focus in terms of the goals and policies for that theme. Next one. The third theme, strategic and collaborative governance. This was the last theme where we were able to have in-person meetings. So this happened, or we kicked off this theme right when COVID started. So this was an interesting ride, to say the least. But the topics that we covered here for this theme included urbanization, land use planning and procedures, community health and safety, and then natural hazards. So we started with a public workshop, which actually happened before COVID, so we got that in. We also had an online survey to review our policy concepts, and then of course, review by all of our bodies. Some of the direction that we got for this theme area was emphasizing the importance of transparency and communication from city government, and also really emphasizing accessibility in reaching decision makers and being part of decision making. There was also renewed emphasis in the policies around the importance of providing public services for creating a robust community and sense of livability, and also the need to grow these services so they remain commensurate with growth. And then finally, this is also a theme where we started hearing about the importance of preserving and maintaining some of the natural areas around the city in relation to also mitigating the risk of natural hazards, since safety and natural hazards was one of the topics here. And then that gets revisited in some of the future themes as well. The third one, attractive and attainable housing. So this theme was all about housing. A lot of work went into this theme. We know it's a really hot topic in Sherwood. This also was happened alongside with your updated housing needs analysis. So there was a significant amount of updated data that was available to city staff and the team to work from. So that was really helpful in approaching the goals and policies for this theme area. Once again, we did do some more targeted outreach to community members that primarily focus on housing development, housing access, and housing affordability. We had our community advisory committees actually help with one-on-one interviews and focus groups with interviews. We also had an online housing preferences survey, so more of a visual survey. In addition, we had a few in-depth interviews with community members to develop a housing snapshot. This was an exercise in helping narrate more of a story around the data that was being presented in the housing needs analysis. And then, of course, we had an online survey to review some of the key policy concepts and review by our CAC, our TAC, our PAT, Planning Commission, and City Council. Thank you. The last one, coordinated and connected infrastructure. I'm sorry, not the last one, second to last one. The topic areas covered here included transportation, public facilities and services, water, sewer, stormwater, and utilities, as well as energy. by this point in the process, the project team and staff really saw the level of kind of high quality engagement that we were getting through interviews with individuals and groups and community partners and organizations that work kind of in a more technical, or I guess holistic thought process around some of the topics. So once again, we did do some more targeted outreach to local agencies, utility providers, and city departments to help us better learn and understand what are some of the opportunities and challenges that relate to how the city operates, or to what is happening around the region when it comes to energy or infrastructure, transportation, et cetera. So a lot of this targeted outreach that we did throughout all of these themes was very much a learning process for everyone. So it was very illuminating. This helped us craft some policy concepts that were put out through an online survey, and then once again reviewed by our PHE and our CAC and CAC and our Planning Commission and City Council. So once again, another iterative process. And then finally, healthy and valued ecosystems. This is the last theme of the comprehensive plan process. It looks like this slide was accidentally copied over in terms of the key activities from the strategic and collaborative governance slide. But for this theme specifically, we did conduct interviews with local, regional, and state partner agencies, as well as some nonprofit groups that deal with watersheds and habitat, as well as natural resources and parks and recreation. This theme was definitely supported by your updated Parks and Trails Master Plan. So there was a lot of good work that went through that process. And we adopted essentially all of that good work and incorporated it directly into the comprehensive plan. So there's parity between those two documents, which is, of course, always a very nice thing to see. Some of the interviewees that we held here were with the Oregon Department of State Lands, the Tualatin River Keepers, the Tualatin Riverside Council, DEQ, among other agencies. Yeah. Okay, so that was a very high-level recap of all of the activities that occurred over nearly 3 years of work. I know you were all familiar with the ins and the outs for each of those blocks of work. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Erica to go over some of the review criteria before we go back or we finalize the presentation here.
Thanks, Anais. Let's see. All right. My computer just froze there. So in your packet this evening in the staff report, we go over all the review criteria for the updated comprehensive plan. I'm not going to go into all these review criteria in depth. They are reviewed and analyzed in your staff report with findings, but we do have to meet the statewide planning goals. We have to meet other applicable policies in the Oregon administrative rules and statutes. And then of course, we look at the Metro Regional Functional Plan requirements as well, and any applicable requirements from the Regional Transportation Plan. So all the findings for those criteria are in your staff reports. We did notice the comp plan to all of our affected agencies and departments in September. We did the public notice in accordance with our development code. It was noticed in the Times. And we also did some additional public outreach via the Archer. And then we have received one public comment, as I stated earlier, from the Oregon Fair Housing Council and the Housing Land Advocates, and one joint single letter. So with that, Anais and I will welcome any final feedback and questions that you may have this evening. And
So just
sharing my screen. Okay.
So I just want to make sure we follow the public hearing script, because sometimes we get me personally gets ahead of myself and starts discussing before we follow procedures. So this is the staff and applicant presentation, and we can ask questions. I think procedurally questions would be best served now. Then we will open it up for the public testimony, and just would like any commissioner, if you have not received the email from Erica, to please check your inbox now, because there was an attachment from them with a about a 41-page letter from the public testimony, and Erica's going to read the first 4 minutes of that into the record as prescribed in our meeting rules. And then once we do that, then we can have further questions of staff, and then we can go into deliberation. My first question just is a procedural question. The state and Metro, have they already reviewed initially and throughout the process the draft of our comprehensive plan? So this is Metro, you said that we have to assure that we meet, as in your staff report, we have to meet these criteria, and you didn't go through all the criteria, but we read it because that's part of the staff report, that we have to meet goal 1, goal 3, goal, whatever. State has been partnering with us through this process, so they're not all of a sudden go, oh, you guys completely missed goal 1, and so you're going to have to do it all over again. This has been an iterative process, and all partner agencies, state and Metro, have been doing buy-in throughout the process. So not only by us reading it and being assured that staff has done their part, state and Metro have found concurrence with what you're saying in the staff report, correct?
So we have not received any comments from the state or Metro in regards to the staff report. We do know that, they have been involved in this process along the way. We've had state representatives on our TAC as well as Metro representatives. Okay, thank you. It's nice for the public to hear that this is, we've not done in a vacuum. It's done very, we have been interacting back and forth. So does anybody else have any technical procedural questions on the process before we hear the public testimony? I don't see any commissioners raising their hand. I have a 4-minute timer because I don't think you're going to get through 41 pages before 4 minutes is up. So if you want to go ahead and start, that would be great, Erica. Sure, thank you. Dear Planning Commission members, this letter is submitted jointly by Housing Land Advocates, HLA, and Fair Housing Council of Oregon, FHCO. Both HLA and FHCO are nonprofit organizations that advocate for land use policies and practices that ensure an adequate and appropriately supply of affordable housing for all Oregonians. FHCO's interest relates to a jurisdiction's obligation to affirmatively further fair housing. Please include these comments in the record for the above referenced proposed amendment. As you know, all amendments to the city comprehensive plan and zoning map must comply with statewide planning goals. Our ORS 197.1722A. When a decision is made affecting the residential land supply, the city must refer to its housing needs analysis, the HNA, and buildable lands inventory, BLI, in order to show that an adequate number of needed housing units, both housing type and affordability level, is supported by the residential land supply after enactment of the proposed change. Goal 10 findings are also required for code changes affecting residential development feasibility, such as parking standards and setbacks. The staff report for the proposed amendments to the Sherwood Comprehensive Plan recommend their approval. This conclusion is contingent on Goal 10 findings contained within the report, articulating that the Sherwood plans for a complete community that balances housing needs, and then suggests that Goal 10 is satisfied. However, based on Sherwood's own HNA, the statement is not supported. Sherwood has a deficit of 608 dwelling units, the largest number in the medium to high density zones. The HNA states that affordable housing types, apartments, townhomes, etc., are needed to serve the 31% of Sherwood residents that have incomes below 80% median family income. Yet the amendments advance the only way to meet these goals is through achieving compliance with the Metropolitan Housing Rule and performing annexations. In contrast to other cities, this approach does not consider the most direct method of meeting its housing obligations, upzoning and increasing densities in order to fulfill the city's housing needs. Additionally, even if the city could meet its deficit of higher density zone land through annexations from Brookman and Sherwood West, as the amendments contend, this would create a mimicry of redlining, with the more affordable housing options lumped together and isolated from the rest of the city. The new housing recommendations of the Sherwood Comprehensive Plan would meet the minimum requirements of the Metropolitan Housing Rule, but it would ensure default segregation, if not outright exclusion of Sherwood's more vulnerable present or future residents. See Attachment 1, describing HLA's concerns about Sherwood's pattern of segregation. The required goal findings must demonstrate that the changes do not leave the city with less than adequate residential land supply with respect to the types, locations, and affordability of housing, affordability ranges affected. See Mulford versus Town of Lakeview, Gresham versus Fairview, and also Home Builders Association of Lane County versus City of Eugene. Moreover, the city's track record with annexations shows that annexation is not a problem solver for housing. For example, Sherwood annexed land to expand its high school. Instead of planning for a mix of housing on ample land available for such use in proximity to the new high school, the city instead prioritized massive sports fields. In fact, the school site search said that having a single high school mascot was more important than even considering the possibility of 2 high schools, such that housing opportunities could have been, but were not considered in the mix of school sites, and that could alternatively been considered. See Attachment 2.
That is the end, but you are 1 paragraph away. So
I am 1 paragraph away. Okay,
there
I'll
you
keep
go.
going. The city has not taken a proactive approach to building up its housing supply or building in affordability to that supply. Significantly, Sherwood ranked near the bottom of large cities in housing production during 2020. See Attachment 3. HLA and FHSEO urged the commission to defer adoption of the proposed amendments until adequate Goal 10 findings can be made and the proposal evaluated under the HNA and BLI. Thank you for your consideration. Please provide written notice of your decision to FHCO in care of Alan Lanzo, address, and then also in care of Jennifer Brager. And then please feel free to email said email addresses, and thank you for your consideration.
Okay. So, and again, all commissioners were provided a copy of this letter in its entirety with the attachments, and it will be included with the record when it's forwarded on to City Council for their hearing. And I believe staff made a change or a revision.
Yes.
Okay.
So I can just talk about those quick revisions. Those revisions were sent to Planning Commission this afternoon. Staff did make some additional findings in our Goal 10 response. And in that response, we anticipate meeting our housing supply through annexations, like it's stated in that letter, but also through a future UGB expansion request through Metro in 2024 for a portion or all of Sherwood West. So that will increase housing, not only housing supply, but we'll also look at different types of housing in that area to meet Goal 10 requirements. The Fair Housing Council and the Housing Land Advocates, their main concern was that the city at this time were not considering the most direct method of meeting our housing obligations, which would be, upzoning certain properties or increasing our housing densities in our development code. It's as stated in the staff report, this comp plan update is not a map amendment. We're not changing our map, and we're not changing right now any of our language in our development code. That would be the next step. Is to go through a development code audit and to make changes, that are needed, based on updated goals and policies in the comp plan. What we're doing right now is we are laying that, foundational framework, and really addressing our needs and making sure that we're going in the right direction through the community input that we've received through this process. So that is staff's response.
And thank you. I see Commissioner Kai's hand up. I wanted to add one more comment about the letter itself, in that their statement that Sherwood is in the bottom of housing production in the year 2020. That is a very narrow look at it, because for the 2 decades before that, we were in the top growing. For the 90s and the beginning of 2000, we grew exponentially, and we grew at a much greater rate than anybody in Oregon did. So it is, it's unfair to categorize us in one aspect for 1 year when you could look at 20 years and see that that is not how we've grown, and not that we have been producing housing products. So anyway, that's my comment. Commissioner Kai, you had a comment, question on either on the letter or just in general regarding the comprehensive plan itself.
Just on a point about the letter, but not necessarily on the letter itself. When their desired approach for us to achieve the housing goals, it doesn't matter how they're achieved necessarily. It just matters that they are. Is that right, Erica?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I wanted to understand or clarify. So.
And there's different methods, of achieving our housing deficit.
Yeah.
Of 608 units.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that comment because of what they were suggesting, that we should do it through adding a great deal of density and up zoning, I think they called it. So we're just saying, well, no, there's other ways to do it as well. Kind of, yeah.
And I think at this point, changing our map designations is not part of this process. We've spent 4 years trying to get a comprehensive plan that the community would be in favor of, and to pivot at the end would be unfair.
Yeah, I agree. I think staff handled it well.
I agree too. Thank you, Erica. So does anybody have any comments about the text? In reviewing all the document that went into the staff reports justifying that we've complied with all that, I did my best to read every single word, but I may have missed something. But the document itself, which I have to say is absolutely beautiful. I am so impressed with the result of what the Community Advisory Committee and the consultants and staff has put together. The end results here have been fabulous, especially when you look at where we started and what we had before. So it's always easier to be an editor of a document than it is to be the person creating it. So I have really quick, fast edits, I hope, just to start plugging along. And I put them in page number order so we could just flip through them pretty fast, I hope. Pages on page 6, last paragraph, there's a missing word. Almost all decisions will include applicable policies that weigh more than others based on supporting facts. The word on's missing. And then I believe the bolded large titles should all be in the same size font, because when it was what is a comprehensive plan? That page was all one page, but then things got reworked. And so I think all three of these titles should be same size font. And the same is true for page 8. This should be all the same size font. Updating, why now, developing. And then in the version that I have, the why now paragraph is split in the middle of a sentence. And then the first paragraph under developing the 2040 vision, that paragraph is split in updating, and then it does a new paragraph, the comprehensive plan on page 8. And I don't know, I don't see Annie's to see if she's got tracking with me or if Erica, if I'm going too fast.
Nope.
Got
I'm
it?
following along.
I'm following.
Okay, I didn't know if I was. And then on page 11, I think it's in the middle. I think it should be offered in-depth knowledge and understanding to keep the tense the same. I don't know. Just that was a really awkward sentence. And then I'm flipping, I mean, you're gonna love this, all the way to page 28. And I don't know how we do it, but we just need a better picture for low density residential because there is no distinction between low density, medium density, and high density.
I was wondering the same thing.
High
These
density.
things all look the same.
If there's any way that we can find a lower density that has a park into it or something so that we can see that there is a division of spacing, that would be better. And I don't know if there's a way to get high density that includes an apartment type area or because the target area, it's kind of hard because it's right next to the commercial area. So anyway, I'm flipping to page 34. The second paragraph, if you read it, it's a little rough, like maybe it should be 2 sentences or something. Despite a highly skilled and educated population and an availability of light industrial land for development, Sherwood has met with constraints on infrastructure development and capacity and a location on the geographic fringes of the metro region. I don't know if we can split it into 2 sentences or take out an and or 2.
I'm sorry, Jean, what page was that?
Page 34, thriving and diversified economy. It's a long sentence with a lot of ands. And then page 38, we discussed the citizen involvement program, which is what has been in the comprehensive plan all along. But on page 40, we change it on policy 1.2 to a public involvement program instead of the citizen involvement program. And then whipping right along to page 44, the title should be moved over to page 45, at least the way the page broke for me. The title for community health and safety is hanging by itself on page 44.
Yeah, see that.
And the last sentence on page 45 is not a sentence.
Yeah.
I think we could just remove the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. We'll
The
remove
whole
that
final
one.
sentence there on page 45.
The whole thought. I mean, maybe.
The last sentence.
Yeah, because it's not a sentence, and
I agree. I think it's dealt with by prior, leading up to that.
Yes. Just remove the last thought. And this is the one substantive change that I would like to put in here. Under policy 3.5, when we do UGB expansion areas to complete concept plans, I would like to add a third bullet point that recognizes landforms as expansion occurs, because that's part of what we've been looking at through the comprehensive plan, that we are growing in and around our waterways and our hills and valleys. And that was a concept that we drove through many of these processes, but it didn't end up in the policy. And I would even forego item C in policy 3.4 if we needed to make room for it, because right of way, that seems like it's a rule, not a policy. That adding right of way, is that needed in our comprehensive plan?
But sorry, this policy 3.4 under goal 3 on page 47.
Yeah, does item C need to be in there? Right of way that is not within the city limits, maybe annexed for road construction. Is that a comprehensive plan policy, or is that just a planning rule? I guess I got lost on why we were adding it in there.
It's all annexation criteria.
Right. So this is annexation criteria. So we want to make sure that we can annex the appropriate right of ways if they need.
Okay.
But Jean, I think that we should definitely add the concept of land form to policy 2.5. That was something that you flagged at one of the last work sessions in June, and we actually added land form, the topic of land form to a number of policies, including 3.3. It's there, and then it's a couple of other places as well. So I like the idea of also echoing it again in 3.5.
Okay. Thank you. And then,
can I ask a question on 3.4 and 3.5? 3.4 are those criteria A through G stated somewhere else? Do those already exist in some sort of city policy or code or something like that? They're just being restated here.
they seem a little awkward, don't they? They go from visioning to prescriptive.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, I can understand it if this is the only place these appear. I could probably buy that, but otherwise it's just like, yeah, ensure annexation to the city occurs in an orderly manner. Consider annex proposals which meet the criteria designated by the city and wherever, something like that, and then it's found somewhere else in some document that we keep up to date with regard to annexations. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
I think what we ran into when the annexation occurred for the high school was that we did not have clear and objective standards in our comprehensive plan, and it became awkward to point to something within an established document to allow annexation to occur.
Okay.
In a logical manner.
So we're trying to use the comprehensive plan to kind of define annexation then a little bit because there's nowhere else to do it.
Correct.
For right now. Yes.
Not sure I like it, but I mean, if
there
that's the venue, then.
Is there a place to codify it in the development code?
So that's our next step on one of our action items to do in the future is to go to look at this policy and how do we codify it within our development code for future annexations, because we've kind of set up this broad policy. The next is, the implementation portion.
So it's an action item on our next steps.
Yes.
Well, I mean, if we're going to deal with it at the next steps, and it's for sure an action item it's coming up, maybe we leave it out of the comprehensive plan and deal with it where it needs to be dealt with. Because it is a little awkward to kind of really get specific in defining some kind of policy in here.
I think the idea, and I'm sorry, I may have missed some of this conversation, but I think the idea is that if we don't have anything in our comprehensive plan, we don't have any criteria with which to evaluate House Bill, 1573 or whatever the annexation basically where it can't go to a vote. If we have something in our comprehensive plan and implementation documents, then we have the ability to not approve or approve an annexation. But right now we don't have anything. And so if you don't have anything, then you can't say it doesn't it's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, and you don't have a choice but to, or not you, but council doesn't have a choice but to approve annexations that come in.
So is the key there that the law basically points to a comprehensive plan and therefore we should put it here? Or is it just that it needs to be written down somewhere?
It has to be, I think that the law says it has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan or something like that. Erica, I don't recall the exact language, but.
So that makes it awkward, but necessary, sounds like.
I want to say everything on land use needs to be consistent with the city's comp plan. That's
Yeah.
That is correct. It is stated in the state law.
And right now, when someone wants to annex to the city of Sherwood, we have, I think the only criteria is that it has to have the ability to connect to services and it's contiguous with an existing parcel. So there are lots of pitfalls if you only have a couple of very limited criteria and we no longer have voter approved annexation. You don't have any control over ensuring annexation occurs logically. And with resources dedicated for that. So.
Same thing applies to 3.5, I'm guessing?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
All right, cool. 49, for some reason, I thought we were going to try and support safe routes to schools and a safety awareness program. And I think that policy I don't know if it got omitted intentionally because it was someplace else. But under Goal 5 in community health and safety, I had supporting safe routes to school and the safety awareness programs.
Jane, that is in the transportation theme. Let me see if I can find it.
Okay. Oh, I trust you. You probably have it more memorized than I do.
I just do want to find it.
I remember talking about that in like some other thing, the TSP has called or something like that.
TSP.
Yeah, it's on page 61. It's about safe routes to school specifically, but it's page 61. It is policy 3.2. Partner with the Sherwood School District to develop a citywide safe routes to school program that improves safety, encourages walking, rolling, and biking to school, identifies critical infrastructure needs, and positions the city for regional, state, and other funding opportunities.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. I just had it in. I had it in safety instead of.
Okay. Yep. 3.2. Yep.
Excellent. And then on page 70, we whip all the way back to the back. Oh, reference documents. I'm assuming you're going to add the EOA.
Yes.
And I would like to add the appendix for I don't know if it's a reference documents, but an appendix which has the worksheets and the surveys from the program, because I think as an institutional document or an archival document, those work papers were invaluable in us coming to conclusions that if someone wanted to go back to that appendix. I don't know how that, do you adopt the appendix or have it as a sidebar? I'll let you think on it, but I think a lot of work went into those. And with that in mind, I loved Anais's opening because she actually gave me the word that I was looking for. The infographic profiles that were provided to the CAC during our process. When I look at each one of the, like this is thriving and diversified economy, there's a big blank white spot. I would like to see if we can get one or two of those infographics put in here to kind of support have a picture supporting the thriving and diversified economy or whatever. I don't know if other commissioners remember. Oops, may have gone crazy, but there were some of the 2-page things that we were handed out in these meetings. They provided some insight to the different chapters that we were talking about, and I just thought they were really helpful. So I don't know how hard that would be to pick one or two. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Jean, I would almost suggest we do them all or none rather than pick one or two, just in terms of visual and also information consistency across all of the 16. So if you did want to include the infographics for each of those themes, we could do it right in the document. We could also package those infographics with those council memos that I think are actually really informative, because they lay out exactly what happened and what changed with every iteration of draft goals and policies. And I know you've gotten those council memos. I think those are already packaged as like a document in and of itself. And I know Erica shared that with Planning Commission as we were kicking off these work sessions. But I think maybe combining those memos along with those infographics could be an appendix. Though I guess the question that I'm not sure yet is whether or not you want to adopt that, or if we should just identify that as an appendix and then have, I don't know if we want to adopt it, but definitely have it as an appendix. I'm not sure. I have to think about that.
Okay. I agree I understand what you're saying, because the work that went into these 2-page documents, and that it provides a picture in time. And so when someone goes back to look at our comprehensive plan, and they can see in 6 pages, 2-sided color graphics, what we were looking at, commuting flows. I mean, when you look at that, it's such a visual about what's coming in, what's going out, and having it as an appendix.
I think we can make a supporting documents page, and we can list out the supporting documents and, state these are supporting documents to the process, of the completion of the comp plan. These, were not adopted as part of the ordinance. They support the document in and of itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just didn't want to lose the history to how we got there. There was, like I said, a lot of work put into them. I don't know if and the CAC and the surveys and all the information that put together, that we didn't just try and copy someone else's, that this was all, years of blood, sweat, and tears and iterations that came from came through a very fabulous process. And Ace, I don't know if you made other one of these, but I can't imagine that there's anyone that looks like the one we just created. So,
nope.
So, well, thank you. I do like that idea, and I don't know if it's like you said, of an appendix not adopted, but reference material for the next time someone. It'd be super easy to update the comprehensive plan by just looking at some documents and updating what was there and doing a new pulse of the community survey, and not having to start from scratch on every one of these themes. So, and those are it. That's what I had.
That's it?
I was also wondering how many acres in Sherwood, but I didn't know if that's any place we had someplace in here, how many acres we've grown into, but that was just a sidebar question. So,
grown over time since the 1990 comp plan.
Yeah, how many acres? Yeah, because
you know what? I don't have that information in the staff report or in the comp plan document itself. I do have the population growth, though, mentioned in the staff report, how much we have grown since 1990 to 2021.
Yeah, I saw the landform and the changes in the population, but I was just wondering by acreage how much we did,
Yeah.
because it helps give perspective. If we are 2,400 acres now,
Mhm.
and we're adding 1,200 acres with Sherwood West, we are half again adding to our community. And I think that's kind of about what I had heard, but I'm not sure. That's why it came up, is that how much are we adding in Sherwood West? Are we doubling the size of Sherwood, or just to what
Degree.
degree are we in it when we look at this?
Is that something that you would like me to include in the stat? Okay.
No, just
Okay. Well, I can find that information and present back to the commission on what I find.
curiosity will kill this cat. So I don't have any other comments. I've obviously been part of the process from the beginning, and when I look at this, I have I have no artistic talent or claim to that I made this look any better than anybody else, because I didn't. This was the staff, and this was Anna East and her team at 3J. So when I saw this the first time, I was duly impressed. The outcome in layout, format, form, readability was impressive, and in reading all the goals and policy, it captures what we've been hearing through the community through this whole process. So I want to thank you and your team for everything you've done in getting us to this point. So thank you. So.
Yeah, for a 60, 70-page document, it reads pretty concisely well, it flows well, and put together well. You covered some of mine, so I do have one, and this is more of just curiosity. Page 52 on attractive and attainable housing. There's a comment that's kind of made along the way. So it talks about, hey, Sherwood's population has been growing relatively fast. Population has been aging, while the community continues to attract younger people, more households with children. Good. In addition, Sherwood's population becoming more ethnically diverse, and if these trends continue, there will be changes in the types of housing demand. So that kind of just sparked my curiosity about the ethnically diverse component of that. I really am curious, are different ethnicities interested in different housing types, and where did that come from? Like, is that in the housing, is that in the housing needs analysis or something? Where's that statement kind of driving from? Because the next paragraph deals with that as well. It's like, hey, this is really likely to change housing types if ethnicities change in Sherwood. And I'm wondering why and kind of where that came from, or that research. I'm curious.
Those were statements that came out of the housing needs analysis. And I think that statement references the general understanding that that a greater diversity of people often means that there's greater socioeconomic stratification. And so it is generally there will be just a greater variety of housing types that are needed, because these more ethnically diverse communities are not as affluent.
Well, then why don't we just put it economic diversity?
Actually, Daniel, the other part of it is that there's also different expectations for taking care of elderly and having
Sure.
ADUs and different, like there's it's not it's just done differently in different cultures, and so there's the need for that flexibility and having smaller living spaces, but also attached or nearby or things like that for different stages of life.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely remember talking about that, the age stuff and the ADUs and all that. I just don't think I thought of that just purely based on race, nothing else. If nothing else there, that.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not that certain cultures don't take care of their elderly. It's just certain cultures it is expected, and so it was that was just something that was brought up, and I don't remember what study we talked about it at one of these meetings, but it's an important part just to be aware of because it's a need for the community.
Thanks.
Frankly, it's a big part of my retirement plan. I'm hoping my kids have plenty of room for me to stay with them.
You're gonna move in.
That's a long game with being on the planning commission. I want to stay in Sherwood. I want to make sure they have a house that has an ADU that I can live in. So.
Well, there you go. So you're changing the code to make sure that occurs.
Yes.
Yep.
All about Commissioner Giles and his ADU.
That's right. That's right.
I'm thinking 20 years down the line here.
All right. Anybody else have any other comments, concerns, edits that they would like to put before the commission, or are we ready to close the public hearing and entertain a motion?
Well, what's the motion for? Are we? What are we going to do with this? Yeah.
Send it on to council for them to. We would recommend to the council an action, whether we recommend they approve or deny or approve with changes.
Okay, so we're doing kind of like the other one where make the changes, send it on, and then maybe we look at the changes again before the next, on the 9th or something.
Well, I guess the couple of changes that I had, I don't think there were any substantive changes. We added one bullet point, and the rest of it were more grammatical edits and formatting and font sizes. So, and then hoping for a better picture in the LDR. And then removing one sentence that wasn't a complete sentence. So I feel confident with Anais and her team and Erica staff, whatever, that the comprehensive plan forward onto council would be. There's such small edits. Erica has a comment, and then Commissioner Kai.
Sorry, I just want to make the comment that we would be forwarding this on to the council with the edits we made in the comp plan during the meeting this evening, and also adding the edits to the Goal 5 findings that staff presented to the commission earlier today.
Goal 10.
Yes.
You said Goal 5.
Oh, sorry, Goal 10. Not Goal 5.
So the motion will need
sources now.
That's okay. So the motion needs to include the Goal 10 edits from your presentation and the editing comments and suggestions made during our deliberation. All right, Commissioner Kai, comments?
Yeah, I've just been looking at page 52 that Commissioner Bantz brought up with that first paragraph under attractive and attainable housing. And I think it could be improved. Like, I'm reading through it, I understand that the last statement in that paragraph applies to all of the examples that come before it, but the way that it reads, it seems to speak more specifically to the ethnically diverse comment just before it. And this might be nitpicking, but to me, this is a concerning perspective that in essence, the perspective is that in order for affluent communities to become more ethnically diverse, more affordable housing needs to be incorporated. And I understand that the data and the metrics support that in general, minorities make or have less income, but something something about that statement is just doesn't sit right with me. But I understand that the paragraph is not trying to state that. It's incorporating all of what's proceeding before that, as far as, aging population, younger families, things like that. And I was just thinking that if what is stated is shuffled, where the ethnically diverse came before the aging population and attract younger people and households with more children, and also kept all of them in one statement rather than separating them out. Right now, in addition, Sherwood's population is becoming more ethnically diverse is another sentence versus the other ones. I think that would more clearly show that the last statement applies to everything in that paragraph, not just the ethnically diverse comment.
What you just said is how I read it the first time earlier today, and then I had to reread it and I rephrased my question accordingly.
And that's how it came off to me too. And I understand that that's not its intent. So I had to think about that point for a while about how to try to better clarify it.
Commissioner Kai, let me ask this: do we need the word ethnically diverse instead of just diverse? Does that?
Well, I don't know if I'm the best to answer that. I mean, personally, I don't think. I tend to agree with you that I don't think ethnically needs to necessarily be included, but I mean, staff and East, like, is there.
Well, so because here's the thing, right? Is diverse. I mean, we are talking about different kind of housing to meet diverse, whether that is age, ethnicity, income, stage of life. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot that's under that umbrella. Do we need to cause anxiety for?
For me personally, I just think it's kind of redundant. Like, I think the phrase ethnically diverse, the way that it's being used, I think diverse would get to that point, but I don't know, is there a reason that it needs to be more specific necessarily?
And that's why I asked my question. What is it about race alone that causes different housing types to be needed? I understand there's correlations with other factors, but
yeah, and in fact, I don't know that it would be race as much as culture, but so because then there's also health and different so totally. It just unless there's huge objection, why don't we just strike? I don't know. I'm striking ethnically from it.
I don't feel that I have an issue with it. I think it would help it work better.
Well, the first sentence, actually, we could, Sherwood's population growth and shifting demographics affect future housing growth. So we could, Sherwood's population growth, comma, shifting demographics and diversity affect future housing growth, and then strike the whole sentence. If we feel that diversity.
Yeah, I like that because because frankly, I want to embrace the diversity and not just like we're doing with the design standards, right? I don't want to hem it in. I want to say, see yourself in Sherwood, right? We want people who value Sherwood, regardless of where you're from, what your age is, all of the other stuff, right? It's you value living in this kind of a community.
Gene, I think if it said growing diversity in that first sentence, so Sherwood's population growth, comma, shifting demographics, comma, and growing diversity affect future housing growth, ... That, like, I think that sums up what that statement does later down the line.
All right. Commissioner Whitehall, have a comment on that?
Yeah, I'll take the dissenting opinion here. Just from, I mean, by these definitions, you can have an all-white neighborhood, everything, but as long as you have ages and economic diversity, you're meeting the goals of Sherwood. That'd be concerning for me.
So that's where you're saying ethnically diverse is important to maintain or include?
I think so.
So just to further clarify that inclusion?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think there's other groups or inclusions
Yeah,
we're missing.
Yeah,
that-
because then LGBTQ and by the way, I am very wanting to be inclusive. I'm wondering does ethnically narrow it too much, right? Or does but that's fine. I could go either way. In fact, if you feel strongly about it, then I'll just go ahead and say that's fine. I'm not. I mean, I'm a white male. I'm not the target of that, but if it strikes your ear differently, I'll include it. That's not the hill I'm going to die on.
Are we still asking questions of the applicant at this point, or are we just deliberating?
Are we deliberating? Yeah.
Well, I think we're
Well, I want to ask Annalise a question if we're still deliberating, if we're still open.
we could ask. Yeah, we did not close the hearing yet. No.
So I guess from your professional opinion, Annalise, what have you seen in other planning commission cities? Because Taylor brings up a good point, because there is a lot of diversity to be considered, not just ethnic diversity, and we want to be an opening and welcoming and safe community. Is there other language, and this question to Erica as well, that other cities or planning commissions are using so they can encompass that?
Yeah, great question. I wouldn't say that I've seen it called out specifically. I actually often see a similar statement, mostly with the word just diverse. I think that language came from the housing needs analysis. But I've seen it not really called out with the term ethnic, but rather just diversity. And I think it's been left at that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when I was running for city council and people were saying, "Hey, I want to keep Sherwood," what I always kind of pushed back on is said, I want people here in Sherwood that love being in Sherwood, that love like literally from anywhere, that means they value the schools here, they value the small community. They're and the more that we can get of people that are and really from all different backgrounds, it just makes it, it makes it a better place to live. And so, but Commissioner Widola, I get it. It's kind of a weird thing because I do want to encourage more diversity of all kinds. Do I start spelling out specifically? I don't know. I don't have a great answer for you.
Maybe the right answer. Well, maybe you guys are onto something with just leave it at diverse or diversity.
Yeah,
and that is all encompassing.
Yeah, in fact, I don't, and I don't know that if I saw, white single family houses all down the street just with different income levels, in my mind, that doesn't strike me as diverse, right? And so, again, this is kind of one of those I'll know it when I see it things where, I don't know. I get your point though. I probably am leaning on the side of just diversity, and we, because I don't want to be boxed in, I guess.
And again, I mean, diversity in it, like reading it, like I initially felt it has some redundancy. Well, I understand your point, Commissioner Widola. I think it is still understood. Diverse still is encompassing. Within that, I think the further point that you're kind of making, which I think is valid, is that historically, Sherwood is historically predominantly white, but and so it's kind of making a point counter to that. But again, I from what I remember from the data, the needles on this issue, particular ethnic diversity, the needles moving a little bit, not drastically, but a statement like this is still true. It's you know.
So if we switch that first first sentence, just reflecting diversity, what about retaining the next sentence deals more specifically with age? And I don't know about the rest of you. I mean, at some point you do have to be somewhat specific. I think that the age issue has very specifically come up, connected to a lot of components to the housing needs analysis, ADUs, and all that stuff. I think there's an easier connection to forthcoming trends with that it's preponderant enough to specifically call out. Maybe leave that in, or what do you guys think? You want to pull that out too, or?
I think it's important because as you age, the type of housing you need varies differently. When Commissioner Giles said something about seeing a street full of, I don't know how he said it, white houses that were for different income levels, I thought, well, how would I know the ethnicity of anybody living in a house?
No, I was saying houses full of white families, right? So, like of just different income levels, right? That for me, that's not diversity necessarily.
Yeah, it's not diversity, and to me, it's not distinguishing either, because you can't tell from the outside of my house who lives there. And so, but I think from the outside of the house, with ADUs or with the number of bedrooms and the size, you are telling the age band that you're doing. You have empty nesters or newcomers or families or multi-generational. So I think the age distinction is important, because one of the things that we are missing in this community that is now just coming in are assisted living facilities, memory care units, and those types of facilities that do and are age dependent. So, and on the other side, we might need more daycares as people work from home more. So I think the second sentence is valid in distinguishing age as a driving factor for different housing types.
Yeah, I think if we just add growing diversity into the first sentence and then remove the second to the last sentence in that paragraph,
and the very last sentence is very affirmative. There will be changes, whereas the next two sentences are both use words like likely. I do think it's likely, but I don't know how affirmative we want to be. I
think that's a valid point. I'd like for that language to come into that last sentence, like you're saying.
Kind of reflect the next two, just in alignment.
Well, again, or just like we don't know for certain. We can. So I think it's a better tone.
Yeah, and we don't want to get ourselves in a position where we're asked, why haven't you changed code because your comprehensive plan said you would, when something, somebody's interpretation of one of these is triggered, right?
Because God knows no one's going to use this against us. So.
Yeah. So. I like what's been proposed. Makes sense. Good discussion.
Yeah.
And thanks for jumping in, Commissioner Kai. I don't think I did an adequate job of expressing what I was thinking through there at the outset.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing it up. It just took me a while to kind of process how it needed to, what I was thinking. So.
So as a commission, we're comfortable with growing diversity in the first sentence.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, any other changes to that or any questions of staff before we close the public hearing then? All right, then we're going to go ahead and close the hearing and I'll entertain a motion.
And the motion is to adopt as recommend as amended and let staff amend it, send it to council, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
With modifications discussed in the hearing. So
okay.
From the staff report and commission deliberation.
Would you like to do what we did with the other one, where we as citizens get to review it on the 9th just to see the changes, even though we can't make any new ones? Or
if you want
you can do that regardless.
I guess that's true. Yeah, we can just see it anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
Either way, that's fine. Cool.
I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for Sherwood's comprehensive plan update project LU 2021-020 based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis findings and conditions in the staff report, along with the modifications stated in tonight's hearing.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that the City of Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation for approval for the Sherwood Comprehensive Plan 2040 case file LU 2021-020 PA. Any further discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Chair Simpson, aye. Vice Chair Kai?
Aye.
Commissioner Widola?
Aye.
Commissioner Giles?
Aye.
Commissioner Bance?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And would the commission like to have an electronic version sent of both the residential design standards and the comprehensive plan when council gets their copy?
We can make that happen for sure.
Okay, and only
That's fine, I think.
I think just email's fine for all of us. Save a tree. That would be great.
Yep.
And congratulations, Anais, on your promotion. Is that all due to all the hard work here?
Thank you,
Torture
Jean.
from the
That's very
city.
kind of you.
Yeah, you've done such a great job. You have had a lot on your plate, I'm sure, with the city comprehensive plan. I mean, that's years that we've been working on this, and you have done an amazing job. So thank you.
Thank you, Jean. And I have to say, you have some pretty amazing staff to work with. So kudos to them.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, if there's anything else on the agenda, I don't have a back to my page 1, so I don't have anything beyond our public hearings. And since it is 10:59, are there any commissioner announcements, or do I need to do anything else before we close the public hearings or close the meeting? As I panic. Is there anything else under our agenda? I don't have another.
Is the public hearing closed now?
The public hearing's closed. We voted on it. We're all good there.
What's on the docket for 2 weeks from now? I don't remember off the top of my head. I knew tonight was going to be a marathon. I knew that was coming, but wondering about the 9th. Anybody know?
Yeah, so we have 2 site plan reviews for some industrial land uses in the Tonkin employment area.
Okay.
And is that Cedar Creek coming back to us?
It will be coming back. They asked for continuance to December, and we are actually meeting with the applicants later this week.
That's right. It was continued to December. Sorry.
Do you still want us to hang on to these big blue bags full of all that stuff for now?
Well, let's coordinate, Dan, and we can come pick them up and recycle that information.
Well, the blue packet is the 3-ring binder from Cedar Creek, the applicant,
right,
and their plans.
Yeah.
right, which is 2 months away now. That's why I'm asking.
Hold on to that.
Hold on to that.
And the initial staff report. So we'll need Eric to somehow.
We'll update any information that you need.
Okay, don't know if I still have the original staff report. I do have the blue bag with the binder and all the stuff. I just was wondering, since it keeps getting continued, And it's now another 2 months away if they need it back or something, you know, while everybody just sits in my office here waiting for a public hearing.
It can sit there, and if you ever lose any, documentation, just let us know, because we can provide it.
Okay. The other blue bag, I'll get back to you when I can. I'm stocking up on blue bags around here, so good.
I'm
I
down
don't
to
have anything
2.
else. Yeah.
All
I'm
right.
good.
Thank you.
Personally, I would just like to say thank you to all staff and everyone involved on all of these things, but especially to Chair Simpson on all of these. I know the residential design standards especially has been a huge thing that you've been pushing for, and I strongly feel so many of these things wouldn't happen without your continued diligence and involvement. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the thank you very much. I appreciate that. I do it under the staff does it. I just edit documents and follow along with them. So, but you guys as a commission have been amazing, and I appreciate you guys hanging on till 11 o'clock tonight to do 3 big ones, so we don't have to continue it, and that the council can get their work moving forward. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. So, and this means we don't right, Erica? No second meeting in November and no second meeting in December. So.
Correct.
Oh, wow. Okay. So so there's only one in each month now.
Yes. This
Yep,
All right.
until
I
the
remember
beginning of
getting
the
that
year, but then we start on another project.
Right.
So,
Okay.
But we did the marathon hearings tonight to ensure that we get to have Thanksgiving and Christmas off.
Cool.
So this is it's a bonus for us. So hard work pays off, and now it's on the council to do their work. So if there are no other announcements, we can go ahead and adjourn.
My only other announcement is I just wanted to make sure, Commissioner Weidel, you noticed that tonight I wore my tie again.
I was going to say something.
Yeah, I know it. I know.
The rest of us need to step up our game a little, I think. Okay?
Anyway.
Oh, all right.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys, and we will adjourn the meeting.
Good
All
work.
right.
everyone.
Night.